Moriko is an overworked corporate slave who quits her job to become a gaming addict. However, everything changes when she meets a smoking hot gamer boy who rizzes her up. Now she'll do anything to play with his special joystick. It all starts with Moriko returning from a grueling day at work and immediately heading to Snoozeville. After waking up the next day, she panics over being late before recalling that she ditched corporate life to be a bum. With nothing else to do, she decides to relive her gamer girl days by setting up a game and creating a guy character. As soon as the game starts, she gets her first side quest to defeat a monster in a dungeon. Once inside, she runs into Master Splinter and realizes that he is the final boss, but she still attacks, only to get a ninjutsu-style ticket to heaven. However, instead of giving up, Moriko continues fighting after every respawn and gets smoked more times than she can count. Just as she is finally about to throw in the towel, a stunning character named Lily shows up to help him. After Moriko explains her current situation, Lily suggests taking some time to learn more about the game world because even a useless lobby bot can defeat him at this stage. After a few hours, Lily suddenly asks if they can keep playing together as friends, a word that sends shivers down Moriko's lonely spine. After she accepts the friend request, Lily helps Moriko get stronger by training with low-level monsters. Then, once she learns how to use a sword better than Conscious Zenitsu, they head back to the final boss lair. This time, Lily offers to help, so Moriko attacks and almost gets smoked again. But after Lily uses magic to heal her, he finally gets the upper hand and defeats Master Splinter. After they celebrate, Moriko gets a much better sword as her reward before finding a treasure chest filled with gold coins and a pair of bracelets. When Lily shows him that she has a similar pair, he puts them on and promises to wear them forever so they can always match. Several days later, Moriko invites Lily to explore the ocean together, and as they play around, Moriko continues losing her brain cells and life savings to the game. Then, they realize that it's Christmas season in the game world. But while Lily gets excited, Moriko comes up with an idea. The next day, Lily tries to hang out again, but he claims something came up and runs off. As the days go on, he continues avoiding Lily, which makes her upset. Much later, at a restaurant, Moriko enjoys dinner with Lily's party until one of them, named Hemeralda, spots Lily all by herself and asks if she is okay. She then explains how Moriko has been avoiding her for days and worries that she did something wrong. After dinner, Hemeralda meets with Canby, the party leader, and explains everything Lily said so they can help them get together again. The next day, during a quest, Canby brings it up to Moriko, and he quickly realizes that the whole point of this quest was to get him alone. Canby then reminds him that party members are not allowed to crack each other before explaining how Lily constantly gets bothered by creeps looking for a gamer girl to make creamy pies with. After he tells Moriko to continue looking out for her as a friend, Moriko finally explains how he has been stacking up points to get her a special crystal rose for Christmas. The next moment, they get attacked by an elephant whose superpower is frozen boogers. Afterwards, Lily tries to enjoy the scenery from a tree, but then Moriko shows up, and she gets worried because he looks like he just escaped a brutal war. After healing him, Lily asks if their friendship is affecting him negatively, but Moriko can't think of a response because she has zero experience with baddies. Thankfully, Lily says she might just be too busy getting stronger, so Moriko asks if she wants to hang out for Christmas. After Lily agrees to it, Moriko logs off the game for a grocery run, but once she sees a bunch of couples, her social anxiety skyrockets, so she quickly grabs everything she needs. However, when she spots one last piece of chicken at the counter, her belly starts begging, so she asks for it, but another customer named Yuta also has the same idea, which makes Moriko panic. To make matters worse, her belly starts singing again, so Yuta lets her have it, and she runs out embarrassed. Days later, it's Christmas, so she logs back in and waits at Lily's tree until she shows up. Lily then gives Moriko a special gift she can use to modify any item he wants, and after thanking her, Moriko pulls out a special rose. She explains that the crystal rose was out of his tax bracket, but Lily tells her not to worry because she actually loves the rose. Several days later, Moriko walks out of the grocery store, already dreaming about all the things she wants to accomplish in the game. Then, a cashier named Kazumi stops her because she forgot everything she bought. After handing the bag over, he recognizes a money card for the game Moriko plays, but gets called inside before he can ask about it. Much later, Moriko is back in the game, helping a mage named Lilac defeat a dungeon beast. Afterwards, Lilac starts talking about how none of their party members are online during the day because they probably have jobs like normal people. Moriko panics immediately because she thinks Lilac knows about her decision to ditch the 9-to-5 life for screen time. However, Lilac actually thinks she is a guy in college and is probably the same age as her, which would explain his lack of a real job. Upon hearing this, Moriko agrees and spends the rest of the day having an existential crisis. Much later, Lily is finally back online, but instead of their usual conversation, she brings up Moriko's age, and he is surprised that she already knows. Turns out, Lilac blabbed about their earlier conversation to everyone because she and Canby made bets about his real age. As Moriko takes a moment to gather her thoughts, Lily says she actually thought he was older than her and admires the fact that he has a whole life ahead of him. After feeling like a worthless fraud for lying about her age to everyone, Moriko realizes that it's the perfect time to ask about Lily's age as well. However, after Moriko pops the question, Lily asks why she wants to know so much about someone he has never met, after also reminding him that the whole point of video games is to have fake characters. She tells Moriko to consider minding his business. The next moment, Moriko starts bawling his eyes out, so Lily apologizes for being too harsh until Moriko stops spamming the crying emote. She then admits that she was a little curious when Lilac and the others started talking about his age, but it doesn't mean Lilac had bad intentions towards him. To make them even, she decides to share a little about herself, but Moriko stops her and suggests having the conversation when they grow closer to each other. Lily thanks him for this, thinking he is a really thoughtful dude, but in reality, Moriko is just disgusted with herself for spreading lies about her age. As they continue walking, Lily tells him not to think Canby is a bad dude because he is the reason their party still exists. A while back, their previous leader got a new job overseas and had to move, so he decided to end the party until Canby offered to take his spot. Much later, they are still at the beach looking at stars when Moriko realizes what the time is and reminds Lily that she has a job in the real world. She panics, knowing it's too late to go to bed, so Moriko offers to stay up with her until the sun rises. Hours later, Moriko ends up with a cold and decides to go to a local pharmacy around the same time Yuta gets on a call with his boss to apologize for being late. As he rushes to get a cab, he accidentally slams his elbow into Moriko's face, knocking her out cold. The next moment, Moriko finds herself in a nightmare-scape, struggling to understand what is happening as an army of corporate slaves try to get her back in the Matrix. Eventually, she wakes up in the hospital and gets confused, so Yuta explains what happened and how he brought her to the hospital for treatment. When she tells him not to worry and claims she is tough, he tells her not to be so hard on herself and suggests getting a prescription for her cold. Moriko says she can't because she doesn't have her medical insurance, so Yuta offers to cover the bill. He then scrambles for a business card and tells her to give him a call if she runs into any problem before also asking for her name. Then, he helps her get a cab and remembers seeing her name in a work folder. Later that day, Moriko is back in the game thinking about everything until Himrolda shows up and asks if he is okay. After Canby and Lilac also show up, Moriko explains what happened earlier, but she makes it sound like Yuta is a girl to keep up his college student facade. The next moment, Himrolda and Lilac completely lose their brain cells as they come up with cheesy pickup lines he can use to win Lily's heart. Thankfully, Canby tells her to just send Yuta a text letting him know that she is okay and thanking him for the help earlier. After agreeing with him, Moriko ditches the game and sends the email to Yuta, who is currently at dinner with a senior coworker named Homare. He immediately sends a response, which makes Moriko panic, so she heads back into the game to tell the others. They all get excited that Yuta wants to take her out as an apology, but this is too much for Moriko, so she logs out again and takes a look in the mirror before realizing that she looks like a witch from the Dark Ages. After logging back into the game, Moriko heads to Lily's tree to think, and soon enough, she shows up and explains how she started coming here to let off all the stress from work. She can tell that he came here for a similar reason, so she suggests venting to each other when the pressure of the real world becomes excessive. After spending a little more time together, Moriko logs out and decides to reply to Yuta, only to see that it's 2 inches the morning. The next day, Yuta gets surprised when he finally gets a response, so he meets up with Homare for breakfast to calm his nerves. However, he ends up arguing over some stupid nickname Homare gave him before asking if he remembers working with Moriko. Homare then recalls how he came up with a nickname for her as well. And after Yuta hands over a manuscript Moriko wrote in the past, he takes one glance and admits she was pretty good at her job. However, when he keeps calling her a weird nickname, Yuta asks if they were work buddies, but Homare says they were never actually friends. He goes on to describe a certain night he called Moriko's department, and was a little surprised to hear that she was covering for the department head, despite it being so late. He came up with the nickname as they spoke because he couldn't think of a good pickup line to riz her up. After the uncomfortable blast to the past, Homare pulls up a picture of Moriko when she was in her corporate baddie era and admits that he has always wanted to taste those milkshakes. Hearing this surprises Yuta and makes him drop the chopsticks, so they both start searching for it, until Homare finds a way to make a simple task weird again. Minutes later, they are on their way back to the office, but Homare decides to make a quick stop at the store, leaving Yuta to face the heartbreak of Moriko's rejection text alone. Later that night, Moriko is on her way back to the store, thinking about the recent changes in her life and realizing that she is not the same miserable bum she was after quitting her job. As soon as she enters the store, Kazumi notices her surprisingly good mood but plays it cool to avoid startling her. After her shopping spree, he spots the game card again, but before he can ask about it, another customer shows up and Moriko escapes again. Once home, she logs into the game and meets Pokotaro, who then asks if he is feeling any better because Lilac told everyone about his complicated love life. Pakataro also admits thinking that she was going to take a break because of all the drama, but Moriko says the game is actually his escape from his tragic life in the real world. Pokataro gets excited to hear this, but then Moriko suddenly receives a gift from Lily. After Moriko's usual panic attack, she opens the gift and finds an expensive robe, but it makes her upset because she knows she is too broke to get Lily something of equal value. However, Pokataro tells him not to worry about it because he also once got an expensive gift from a gamer chick, but she didn't expect anything in return because she knew he was a broke rookie. Hearing this makes Moriko a little less concerned, so he finally asks Pokataro about the scrolls he has been working on. Pakataro then explains that it makes it easier to cast spells before telling Moriko not to bother worrying about Lily's gift because he probably won't ever find out why she sent it. Moriko decides to take the advice literally and logs out of the game before spending the following minutes cleaning up as a distraction. However, even after all that, Moriko continues thinking about Lily, so she logs into the game again and heads straight to the tree to meet Lily. Moriko decides to hand it over, but then she finally asks if Lily had some special reason for gifting it to her. After she apologizes for making her kind gesture seem awkward, Lily admits that there was actually a reason behind it, but first, she wants to tell him a little about herself. When she first started playing the game, tons of lonely gamer boys were in her messages, begging for a chance to partner, and she agreed since she was a beginner. However, she always ended up in pickup groups, and the other gamer girls always hated her for being the center of attention, so she would always end up without a party or ever friends to play with. The only reason she didn't quit gaming was because of a special gamer buddy she eventually met, who made it easier to enjoy playing. After that, she met Kamba, and he helped her even more by posing as her man so none of the insecure baddies would feel jealous. However, Lily says she still kept her guard up until she showed up and changed her gaming experience completely. When Lily suddenly turns to her with an intense but warm look, Moriko panics, knowing that things are about to get serious. Then, Lily asks if they can become official partners and explains how much she enjoys playing with her. Hearing this almost sends Moriko into a coma, so she spends a couple minutes role-playing 50 Shades with her pillow before hopping back into the game and putting on the robe. After she accepts Lily's request, Kanbei and the others express how happy they are that Lily finally found someone. The following day, Moriko looks through her loot boxes to figure out her current net worth, and, as expected, her little gamer girl dreams are about to send her to the homeless shelter. However, after thinking about Lily's perfect face, she decides to ignore common sense, just to make her happy. Meanwhile, a gamer girl named Kano is currently talking to herself about Moriko and Lily's decision to become partners and how Kanbei truly feels about it since he was her fake boyfriend for a while. Several minutes later, at the store, a coworker named Yashiro tells Kazumi not to worry about his interview date because she already has someone else ready to fill in for him. After wishing him good luck, she recalls that he won't work in the store if it all goes well, so she takes back her good wishes. Thankfully, she says it's only a joke before asking him to take off the e-money maintenance sign in a couple of minutes. After she admits that it totally skipped her mind, Moriko shows up to get her usual drink, but then she spots a mushroom and somehow thinks that it looks like Lily. Then, she heads to the counter to pay and gets a new e-money card, but Kazumi explains that it's under maintenance and suggests waiting for a couple minutes. Using this opportunity, he finally asks if she is getting the card to buy more loot boxes from the game, but Moriko gets startled as she never expected someone from the neighborhood to know about it. As Kazumi tries to start a whole conversation about the game, another customer reminds him that not everyone cares about games. Moriko then decides to leave, but Kazumi says they can talk about the game another time, which makes her anxiety skyrocket as she rushes back to the safety of her apartment. Much later, she logs back into the game and meets up with Combat to talk about the loot boxes, before they spot Lilac fully dripped out with a new outfit. One look tells Moriko that it costs a small fortune, but while she watches with awe, Kanbei gets disgusted and asks Lilac if she really just spent her life savings on a virtual outfit. Lilac gets pissed and starts yelling about how it has nothing to do with him, but Kanbei insists that her brain is missing a couple screws because no one ever goes this far for attention. After Pokotero logs in as well, Moriko says she wants to win the prize lot by gathering all the loot boxes, but they all tell him to forget about it because he just jinxed himself by even talking about it. Moriko breaks down, thinking all hope is lost, but they apologize for messing with her right before Lily shows up. She is also excited to gather loot boxes with Moriko, so the group heads out, but just a few minutes later, Moriko uses a point card to unlock the first loot box, only to find a useless healing potion inside. She gets discouraged by this, but after everyone else motivates her to keep going, she cheers up, and Lilac suddenly gets fixated on him. After hours of unlocking loot boxes and failing at every turn, Moriko finally gets lucky to find 2 top prizes, and Lily also gets adorned with every other artifact they discovered. When Pokataro asks what she would have done if they all failed, Lily reminds him that she makes hella bread in the real world, so she can just buy whatever she wants, unlike you brokies. When Lilac suddenly decides to start wearing darker colors, Moriko tries to support her idea, but Kanbei starts roasting her again, saying that she shouldn't bother trying to look cool because chop girls like her can never be baddies. Naturally, this upsets her, but they all decide to continue on another quest instead of arguing. Much later, Pokotaro meets Kanbei and complains about the way he always attacks Lilac no matter what she does. As he continues making this an issue, Kanbei realizes that it's actually Himeralda taking over the Pokotaro character because they are married to each other in the real world. However, Pokotaro says it's irrelevant and insists that he start talking to Lilac without the verbal abuse. By then, Moriko and Lily have just noticed that Lilac changed her outfit, so they ask why. And she claims it just wasn't her style anymore, an obvious lie to hide how bad she feels. Later that day, Yuta goes out for lunch with Homera as usual, but he continues obsessing over Moriko and wants to know why she rejected him, even if she was polite about it. Homera then asks when he became such a relentless stalker because not only has he been obsessing over Moriko, he even started going to the store frequently just for a chance to run into her. Much later, Homera heads to the store. Moriko usually visits and spends the following minutes taking a look around like a creep waiting for his next victim. Eventually, he gives up and buys something to avoid looking weird. But just as he is about to leave, Moriko finally shows up. The fact that she looks more like a homeless junkie than a corporate baddie makes him think he got the wrong girl. But just before leaving, he decides to talk to her, just to be sure. Moriko panics as usual, but as they continue talking, Homera finally recognizes her voice and reminds her of the phone call they had back when she cared about having a career. Moriko also remembers him and gets a little excited, but it quickly fades away because Homera continues yapping and asks how life in the unemployment sector is treating her. He then explains how he also quit working for their previous company, but his savings couldn't pay the bill, so he got a new one. When he suddenly asks her out for drinks over the weekend, she tries to come up with an excuse, but Homera counters every single one, giving her no choice but to accept. The next day, at the office, he shows her number to Yuta to rub it in his face, although he practically forced Moriko to agree to his request. Later that day, Moriko meets Lily in the game, and they both head to the tree to talk. Once there, Moriko starts narrating everything that has happened in the real world, including the accident with Yuta, but she makes it seem like Yuta is a girl to hide her identity. However, after she is done ranting, Lily freezes in shock, and back in the real world, Yuta has the same expression because he has been Yuta this entire time. He starts connecting the dots and carefully recalls everything that happened with Moriko before logging back into the game. Just then, Moriko says that her life would become miserable if Yuta suddenly stopped coming online to play with him. After saying that he spilled something in the real world, Moriko logs out, and Yuta decides that there is simply no way he has been playing with Moriko this whole time. The next day, while getting lunch, Yuta gets upset about Homera going out with Moriko, and of course, Homera starts teasing him about it. Then, he suddenly invites Yuta to tag along, surprising the brooding loner, who then says that he wouldn't want to impose on their time together. After calling him spineless for trying to run from the chick who rejected him, Homera realizes that Yuta isn't taking the bait, so he admits that he actually set up the date just so they could finally talk to each other. He then apologizes for not telling Yuta about it earlier. Later that day, Moriko is at the store for beauty supplies because she can't pull up looking like Baba Yaga's wife. However, while looking through all the products, she realizes just how much she let herself go, and wonders if she will be able to restore some of her beauty. Minutes later, she gets to the counter to check out, and Kazumi apologizes for not finishing their conversation the other day. After he properly introduces himself to her, Moriko does the same, and he immediately starts yapping about the game until he notices that she seems a bit uncomfortable. He immediately stops and apologizes for not even asking if she was okay talking about it. Moriko, not wanting to make it awkward, says it's no big deal and even tells him the server she plays on. But then Kazumi says he also plays on that server and tells her his character's name. Much later, Lilac logs into the game and spots Moriko hiding in the bushes, so she asks what is going on, and he says he is expecting someone. After joining him, she talks about her plans to go hunting with a college buddy who also plays the game using a male character. This surprises Moriko, so he asks Lilac if she found it weird that her friend chose a male character in the game to hide her real-world identity. Lilac says it's no big deal before asking if he is one of those middle-aged Karens who hate when people express themselves. Just then, Kanbei shows up and tells Lilac to stop interrogating Moriko, because she is the last person who would ever judge someone for their creepy lifestyle choices. After apologizing, Lilac leaves to meet her buddy, and Kanbei suddenly says Moriko's name, which sends terrifying shivers down her spine. After the panic attack, Moriko tells Kanbei to stop using her real name, and Kanbei agrees to keep her secret. Then, Moriko apologizes for lying to everyone, but Kanbei claims he doesn't care as long as they can continue enjoying the game together. He further says the others don't have to know yet, but then Moriko says she has been thinking of coming clean to Yuta. Once again, Kanbei tells him to keep the secret and also warns Moriko to take real-world advice from Yuta, just to be safer. Afterwards, Moriko hops off the game to find an outfit for the date, but being a newbie geek has made her forget how to dress up. So she logs back into the game and finds Yuta to ask for advice. After she says that the date is happening tomorrow, Yuta becomes convinced that he can't be Moriko because Homer is on a work trip and won't be back in time for the date, which means Moriko has to be someone else. As Yuta then offers to help her choose an outfit, Kanbei shows up and realizes that Moriko threw his advice out the window. However, instead of getting upset, he decides to help and starts by asking Yuta what she would wear on a date. Just then, Yuta texts Kazumi secretly, telling him to stop with the questions so Moriko won't figure out the truth, but Kazumi tells him to just give an honest answer. After he does, they both spend the rest of the time going back and forth over which hairstyle looks best. Later that day, Moriko heads to the salon to try something new before shopping for clothes. The next day, at the office, Yuta realizes that Homer won't make it back in time for his date with Moriko and gets worried about her being stood up. Hours later, he logs into the game for a quest with the rest of the group and notices that Moriko is offline. Around the same time, Moriko is already at the spot Homera told her about, waiting for him to show up. Minutes later, Yuta starts thinking about Moriko again and wonders if she is really Moriko, before recalling that Homera is still not back from the work trip, which means she is probably still waiting. He then takes the fastest cab to the meetup spot and gets surprised when he sees her still waiting with a disappointed look on her face. As she decides to leave, Yuta hesitates, but eventually calls out to Moriko, who also gets surprised to see him again. The next moment, she gets a call from Homer and gets surprised when Yuta says his name. After Yuta explains that they actually work together, Moriko answers the phone and Homer starts talking about his business trip and how he intends to get her a souvenir on the way back. When Moriko reminds him of their date, he says it's actually tomorrow and she gets embarrassed, realizing that she can't even keep track of days anymore. Then, she tells him that Yuta is here, surprising Homer, who then asks her to put the phone on speaker and hand it to him. Yuta tries to keep the conversation simple to avoid any awkward tension, but then Homer asks him to rate Moriko's looks. Yuta panics, while Moriko asks why he would bring that up and folds herself up in embarrassment. The next moment, Yuta bends over and says she looks even better than Mikasa. Moriko looks up, thinking she is finally about to have a fairy tale romance, but Yuta hands the phone back and says she looks just right for Homera. After she takes the phone back, Homera gets tired of trying to help spineless Yuta and tells Moriko to spend the rest of the evening with him, since she already got all dressed up. With that said, they end the call, and Moriko takes a second to gather her words before asking Yuta if he wants to go out for drinks. Several minutes later, they are at a bar having drinks, and Moriko gets worried that she has nothing to talk to him about. Then, she starts to wonder how Yuta even knew that she would be at the station at that time, so she asks about it. Yuta explains that he already heard about her plans with Homer at the office and was just on his way back when he saw her and realized that she probably got the dates mixed up. After recalling when she mentioned it in the game, Yuta reminds Moriko of the day they met at the store, and she gets embarrassed again. Much later, he is back at the store, staring down a bunch of chicken while buying a bottle of water, which he then takes to Moriko because that little sip of booze almost knocked her out cold. After she takes it and thanks him for the help, he suggests that they go on a walk so she can burn off some of the liquor. Moriko hesitates, so Yuta says she doesn't have to do it, but then she says yes. As they walk together, Moriko apologizes to Yuta for always troubling him before also thanking him for keeping her company. He says it's no problem and calls her a really kind-hearted person, a comment she has only ever heard from Yuta before. After suddenly walking ahead of him, Moriko says she would have probably kept working if there were people like him and Homera in her department. Upon hearing this, Yuta catches up to her and admits that Homera is a pretty chill guy when he is not trying to tease everyone. As Yuta continues glazing Homera, Moriko thanks him for helping her figure out what kind of guy he is and says she is looking forward to meeting him, so Yuta wishes her good luck before leaving. Much later, he calls Homera to say that he will not be pursuing Moriko any longer, but Homera starts teasing him again, knowing that it's impossible for him to just move on like that. However, Yuta insists that what he is doing is for the best. The next day, Yuta is back in the game, prepping for a quest with the rest of the team, but they keep bringing up Moriko's absence. This makes Yuta second-guess his decision because he already knows that she is going to see Homera. Around the same time, Moriko is already at the station, waiting and hoping she doesn't get another surprise visit. Just then, Homer calls and apologizes for rescheduling their date last minute before popping up right beside her and capturing her nervousness in a picture. As they start walking together, Homer moves to shield her from Truck Kun. But then Moriko recalls when Yuta did the same thing yesterday. Minutes later, at a restaurant, Homer asks Moriko how Yuta found her, so she explains what happened in detail, but Homer refuses to believe that it was all a coincidence. Then, he brings up Yuta's love for games, and after saying that she had no idea, Moriko also tells him about her passion for gaming and admits that she asked some of her gamer buddies for advice on what to wear and how to style her hair. After a couple more minutes of small talk, Homera decides to use the men's room and tells Moriko to order anything she wants, but she is already seeing stars from the first round of drinks. Meanwhile, Yuta just made the team fail their mission because she wasn't locked in. As Yuta wonders why he can't focus, Homera sends him a pic of Moriko sleeping in the restaurant and says he wants to take her home for a quick bedroom workout, since she can't say no in this state. Yuta panics and immediately runs all the way to Homera's house, but he says he never meant it because he already took Moriko back to her place. Yuta then claims that he was just checking in, not like he actually cares or anything, but Homera tells him to stop the cat because he is dripping buckets from all the running. Much later, Moriko drags herself out of bed to wash off the makeup. While doing so, she recalls how she kept getting complimented by Homera and Yuta, causing her to start blushing again. Then she hops on the game, eager to meet everyone, but Yuta shows up first and asks Moriko how the date went. After she says it was a lot of fun, Yuta gets excited for him, and in reality, Yuta tries to hide the pain behind a forced smile. Days later, Yuta recalls how he probably made Kanbei suspect him by logging out so suddenly without any explanation. However, his main concern is the fact that he doesn't even feel like playing, just so he can avoid listening to Moriko talk about him and Homera. Much later, while staring at his gaming computer, Yuta recalls that Moriko likes playing at this time, but he still doesn't know if he is up to it. He then recalls the time he knocked her out cold and when she first started playing as Moriko. At first, he thought Moriko was cute because it had been a while since she saw a rookie who was genuinely curious about the game enough to be so consistent. As they spent more time together, Yuta began to notice the streak of coincidences pointing to who Moriko really was, but she refused to believe it until it became obvious. Back in the present, Yuta still can't bring himself to play the game, but he admits that he misses Yuta. Much later, Moriko decides to play and gets excited when she sees Yuta logging in as well. After hopping on, Moriko, along with Himeralda and Lilac, meet her by the docks for a new quest, but Yuta says she just wants to go through some of her clothes. When Moriko gets excited to see them, Yuta gets nervous, but just a few minutes later, she starts showing off the outfits without a care in the world. While Moriko falls in love with the looks and admits that they are amazing, Lilac gets upset that she can't afford even the cheapest one of Yuta's clothes, so Himeralda comforts her. Just then, Moriko notices a change in Yuta's hair and asks if she can easily change it like an outfit. She then explains that female characters can change their hairstyles using some special hair attachments, while the guys can't really do anything about it if they didn't choose long hair from the start. Moriko then recalls that Kanbei has long hair and wonders how he would react if they try to dress him up. Minutes later, the lovebirds are alone in the woods, and Moriko keeps talking about how upset Kanbei would be if they actually did that, but Yuta says he has always been the type to go with the flow, so he might not even react at all. As they continue talking, Yuta struggles to keep his composure because he doesn't know how to act around Moriko anymore. Moments later, they get to the tree, and Yuta says she hasn't really been on the game because she had some personal issues to take care of in the real world. Moriko says it's not a problem before thanking Yuta for all the advice she gave a while back and starts narrating what happened on her date. This makes Yuta feel bad because she doesn't know the truth yet, but he keeps listening as Moriko describes everything that happened, while still making it sound like he is a girl to hide her identity. As he starts to consider stopping her, Moriko continues bringing up the time they spent together instead of the date with Homera, and eventually, Yuta realizes that Moriko enjoyed her time with him better. Moriko goes on to explain how being with Yuta always reminded him of Yuta, because they are alike in so many ways. However, that only makes him feel even worse because she just poured her heart out to the one person she doesn't want to. The next day, Homera calls Yuta to ask for some gaming advice, but Yuta has work, so he hangs up and calls Moriko instead. She gets surprised to see the call, but the real shock sets in when Homera says he wants to play the exact same game she plays. After telling him how to install it, Moriko tells Homera to give her a call back when he is done setting everything up. Then, Moriko tells Kanbei that she has to go, and immediately he leaves. A character named Nico shows up, and Kanbei gets surprised because the character's player should be at work. Moments later, Moriko realizes that Homera will figure out the situation with her fake character, so she starts creating a new one to keep her lies safe. While doing so, she initially wants to make it look like Yuta, but after recalling the character she used in a previous game, she decides to bring it back to life. Minutes later, she logs into the game with the new character and notices some players talking about a new character somewhere in the game. Just then, Homera tells Moriko where to find him and describes his character as a tall baddie, so Moriko walks over and gets shocked when she sees that his character is Hulk's long-lost cousin, named Harumi. After they meet up, Moriko's new character introduces herself as Molly before telling Harumi that they have to create a party to stop the other gamers from hearing their conversation. Right then, Kombi shows up with Nico, and they explain how to form a party in a way Harumi's juiced-up brain cells can understand. After she thanks them, Molly gets worried that she will get exposed, so she starts acting like a newbie who only knows a little about the game. Meanwhile, Yuta gets back home and sees the messages Homera sent about playing the game with Moriko. However, when he sends a picture of her character in the game, Yuta recognizes Molly. By then, Harumi is already heading out for her first quest with Molly and the others. But then, Homera gets a call from Yuta and stops playing the game to answer. Just then, Harumi freezes, and the others quickly realize that he hopped off the game to handle some personal matter. His quirky personality quickly reminds Kanbei of the time he saw Homura at the store, but he ignores that to ask Molly some questions. Minutes later, Harumi is back, so they keep playing while Yuta thinks back to when he first played the game with the younger version of Molly. She mostly complained about hating her job, much like Moriko, but Yuta still doubts that it was her all along, so he creates a new character to join the game. When Harumi tells the rest of the group about it, Moriko panics again. Several years ago, Yuta had just lost his foster parents and made the decision to downscale to a quiet city apartment because he could no longer maintain their massive family home. In the little time he spent living there, the feeling of being all alone slowly started to feel like a curse, so he downloaded his first role-playing game and decided to build a social life there. At first, he was simply excited to have people to talk to every day, and soon enough, he became a 3-point player of the game with that character name, Hearth. One day, a new character with blue hair named Yuki appeared and said she was a newbie who knew nothing about the game. She just wanted someone else to play with. So Hearth offered to join her and teach the ropes of the game. After he also introduced himself, Yuki got excited and asked if they could be friends. Over the days that followed, she quickly became obsessed with the game and kept coming back just to play with him. In the process, they got really close to each other, and she finally started to talk about her struggles with work. She admitted that she has always wanted to quit, but because they keep getting more employees, she has to stay to help out and keep the company running. Feeling bad for her, Hearth suggested talking to one of her superiors to see if they can help reduce the workload. However, Yuki insisted that she could still handle all the workload while playing games with him on the weekends. After one last weekend game, they sat together and had the same conversation over her struggles with work and a desire to quit, but she still ended the day with a positive expression and promised to come back next week. However, that was the last time Hearth saw her in the game again. Back in the present, Yuta is still staring at the screen, hoping that Moriko only made her character look like Moriko because they have similar colors. Well, he completes the character creation. Molly and the others continue watching over Harvey and get excited that she's finally at level 8. Then, they start talking about how she always has to log out for some real-world issues, right before she returns to the game and apologizes for always dipping out. After she says that her body is ready to join them in the game, Molly explains how to find their current location. Moments later, Hearth shows up and writes out his name so they can all see, and when Moriko greets him without panicking, Yuta becomes convinced that she's not the same girl he played with all those years ago. After this, they discuss what quest to go on. Molly follows Hearth on a special quest and gets confused because she doesn't know how to read his name. To break the silence, she asks if he usually plays games because he doesn't seem like a rookie. Hearth then says that he actually loves playing multiplayer games, and she suddenly gets excited, walking up to his face and asking for the kinds of games he's played. Hearth considers shutting it down right there, but after taking a second to breathe, he mentions the name of the game where he played with Yuki. At this moment, Molly freezes and asks how he pronounces his name. After apologizing for making it so hard to read, Hearth says his name, and Yuki freezes as Moriko gets flushed with emotions from remembering that he was a game buddy in the previous game all those years ago. She then thinks back to all the times she went on a quest with Hearth and how he would always offer to help her get better at training, even if they had to take some time to play alone. Several minutes later, Kanbei and Nico get back and realize that Harumi is missing again. Turns out, Hope already fell asleep while playing the game. Just then, Hearth and Molly show up as well, and Hearth thanks them for letting him join their group. After Nico sends him a friend request, he thanks Molly for the tour as well and says he enjoyed spending time with her. After they all log out of the game, Moriko starts to wonder how possible it is that Hearth was actually Yuta this entire time. She convinces herself that it can't be possible, but doubt won't leave her mind. So she grabs her phone and calls Yuta, who just got out of the shower. She answers, surprised that she would call at such an hour, so she apologizes before gathering all her courage and asking if he has played Nanter before. Yuta gets surprised that she would ask this, but he finally admits that he is the same Hearth she played with years ago. Moriko's brain explodes as she falls into bed in disbelief, and as she tells Yuta that he is the reason she continued playing the game, he decides to tell her the truth about Yuta as well. As he wonders how she will react, Moriko starts throwing around in bed as she struggles to contain her excitement. When she apologizes, Yuta says he feels the exact same way about finally playing with her again. Then, Moriko asks if he was disappointed when he met Molly, but Yuta stops her and says she is a much better person than him because she has given her all to everything she has ever done. Using this opportunity, he admits that he has been lying about his gaming life and finally says he is actually Yuta, right before realizing that his phone just died. On the other end of the line, Moriko is still excited because she didn't hear the last part, so she sends him a text before going to bed. The next day, Yuta sees the text and realizes that she didn't hear him, so he heads to the local store in the evening for some quick shopping. After grabbing the supplies, he heads out and runs into Moriko along the way. After he admits that he wanted to see her, Moriko gets embarrassed because she is dressed like a homeless hipster. To make matters worse, her belly starts grumbling again, but Yuta offers to share some of his grub, so they head to the nearest park and find a bench to sit. While eating, Moriko thanks him for lending his coat and scarf as well before asking if it's really okay with the cold. After explaining that his suit is actually pretty thick, Yuta reminds her of when they met at the store and her belly was begging for food. Moriko finally manages to crack a smile and admits how excited she was to finally learn who he really is. As she starts glazing him for helping her play the game all those years ago, he calls her a serious and kind person. Upon hearing this, Moriko says that only one other person has complimented her this way. She then tells him about Yuta and explains how similar they are before offering to introduce them to each other the next time they play the game. Yuta says this will be impossible, so Moriko apologizes for not considering his busy work life. The next moment, Yuta gets tired of the lies and finally admits that Yuta was him this entire time, before calling her Moriko. Moriko freezes in shock as it slowly hits her all at once that the three people she has been confiding with this entire time are the same versions of her best gamer buddy. Yuta goes on to apologize for suddenly dumping it all on her, and says he didn't know how to react when he also discovered the truth. When he finally realizes that Moriko's brain is overheating, she slows down and asks how he knows that she's Moriko. Yuta then admits that he had his doubts after a couple of coincidences, but it was on the day he found her at the station waiting for Homura that he realized who she was. As he gives her a minute to take it all in, Moriko thinks back to all the times they played together and realizes that she would have done the exact same thing if she was in his situation. The next moment, Yuta apologizes yet again, and says he loved all the memories they shared in the game before deciding to quit playing forever. Moriko gets shocked by this, so Yuta says that the sudden revelation obviously makes things awkward for her, which is why he wants to stop playing and give her time to process. However, Moriko stops him and says she's really grateful for everything he has done for her before, admitting that she is also part of the reason why he hid the truth, since she made a fake character as well. As they both start apologizing for lying, Moriko reminds him of the time Yuta asked to be Moriko's gaming partner. This makes him second-guess the decision, so he decides to keep playing and promises to continue being her gaming friend. Minutes later, they return to Moriko's neighborhood. After she returns his coat, Yuta offers to walk her home, but she says it's no problem since the building is really close by. As he turns to leave, she stops him and asks if he can help her with the quest next week. After he says yes, she thanks him for always making time to play with her. Moments later, Yuta is still on the way home when he starts feeling bad because he doesn't want to be just friends with Moriko. Several days after this, Moriko is on a quest with the rest of the team, but she feels bored and lonely because Yuta hasn't logged in a single time since they met the other day. As she considers sending a text, they fail the quest, and after leaving the dungeon, Kanbei loses it and asks Moriko why he is spacing out during an important mission. Moriko apologizes and says he was just lost in thought, but when they ask what it was about, he says it's nothing serious. Sensing the tension, Kanbei reminds him that they are always available to listen if he needs to talk. Moriko thanks him again, but Moriko knows that this isn't something she can talk about with them. A couple days later, Homura is out for drinks with Yuta, but when he starts teasing the heartbroken simp, Yuta barely responds and only admits that he got rejected again. Later that night, Moriko receives a text and panics, thinking it's from Yuta, but it's just Homura inviting her to the park to have a discussion tomorrow. The next day, Yuta wakes up in his apartment and wonders how he got there because all he remembers is drinking bottles until he passed out. He walks to the living room and finds a note from Homura also inviting him to the park for a discussion. Later that morning, Moriko is at the park waiting for Homura, while Yuta slowly makes his way to the park and calls Homura to ask about last night. Homura tells him not to worry, as he didn't do anything embarrassing, so Yuta keeps walking and gets shocked when he sees Moriko at the bench. They both quickly explain that they came to see Homura and realize that it was a setup while Homura watches from across the river. After he leaves, things get awkward really quickly because the lovebirds sit right beside each other and struggle to say a single word. Eventually, Moriko's belly starts doing the talking for her, and Yuta uses that opportunity to break the ice by offering to get her something to eat. Moments later, they get to the store, and she panics, thinking Kanbei is here. But after not seeing him at the counter, she runs up to meet Yuta, who has just seen Kanbei's coworker. She also notices Moriko and starts snooping around before asking Yuta if they are dating. Upon hearing this, Moriko gets embarrassed and runs off while Yuta chases after her. When he finally catches up, Moriko tells him not to bother talking to her because it's probably embarrassing to be with an unemployed bum who games all day. As she continues talking down on herself, Yuta stops her and says he doesn't feel that way at all. Right then, a rainstorm begins, so Yuta covers her up with his jacket before suggesting that they go back to his place because it's closer. Minutes later, they are both in his apartment, terrified about the fact that they are all alone in his house. While Moriko quickly heads into his shower to get cleaned up, Yuta prepares some clothes for her, and they both wonder how to deal with their current situation. Several minutes later, Moriko finally leaves the shower and wonders how to react to this situation, while Yuta prepares some tea and tries to think of something to say to break the ice. After considering what someone like Homera would say in this situation, he almost gives up before thinking about Yuta and deciding to do whatever it takes to make Moriko comfortable. The next moment, she sticks her head out of the passageway and asks for some help, so he asks if the clothes were too big. After saying no, she steps out to give him a look, and Yuta gets surprised by how beautiful she is. Then Moriko asks if he can help dry her clothes. But after he offers to put them in the dryer, she suddenly runs into the laundry room and says she can take care of it. Turns out she just doesn't want him to see her plot covers. After starting the wash cycle, she meets him in the living room, and he serves her a cup of tea before kneeling right beside her and gushing over how she looks in his oversized hoodie. Eventually, Moriko notices the staring and tells him to just sit beside her on the couch. But after he does, she gets nervous from being so close and decides to kneel by the table instead. Feeling bad, Yuta offers to be the one kneeling, but they keep going back and forth over it before Moriko finally notes that his apartment looks really good. She then spots his gaming computer, and after noticing the pink laptop, she asks if it's the same one he uses when playing as Yuta. Before he can respond, Moriko panics and starts apologizing for bringing it up before saying that she just feels embarrassed because she has shared all her deepest secrets with him in different characters. Just then, Yuta asks if she wants to take a look at the computer, and she immediately says yes. So they walk over to it and he tries to show her how to log into the game, but they get too close and he immediately backs away. Moriko notices but continues playing the game to avoid an awkward situation again. Eventually, she asks him if he has ever met any of the gamers in real life, but he explains that his commitment to Yuta's character makes it almost impossible for the other gamers to know who he really is. He then tries to show her something else, but they get too close again and end up blushing before Moriko's belly breaks the tension. To fix that, Yuta decides to cook something, and Moriko offers to help, so they both spend some time in the kitchen before whipping up some nice plates of pasta. After slurping down the entire thing in a couple of minutes, Moriko starts feeling embarrassed again and offers to do the dishes, but Yuta decides to help her do it as well. Right then, she apologizes for running off at the store and says it was her fault for what happened. But then Yuta tells her to stop talking down on herself because a lot of people value and respect her more than she thinks. He also admits that meeting her was probably the best thing that ever happened in his life, but then he takes a look and sees that she's bawling her eyes out. He immediately drops the dishes and tries to find a napkin, but there is nothing to use, so he uses his shirt to dry her tears. As a result, they get really close to each other, but right before the kiss we've all been dying to see. The dryer signals that it's done, so Moriko grabs the clothes and thanks him for the company before heading out. However, Yuta immediately chases after her and walks her all the way home before asking if they can keep spending time like this together, even if it's in real life or the game. Days later, they're both back in the game, conquering incredible quests with the rest of the team and finally enjoying the game like they did before. A couple more days pass, and Moriko finds herself at a station waiting until Homera startles her. He claims to know about her little dates with Yuta, who then shows up and says he already regrets talking about it in the office. Yuta then says it is not a date, but Homera tells them to stop the cap and go enjoy their dinner. After he leaves, they both start walking together, and Moriko finally decides to stop putting herself down and accept that people like Yuta really do value her presence. The next moment, she trips, but Yuta grabs her hand, and they continue walking together while blushing. That's it for this video, folks. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to leave a like. Drop a comment about your favorite character in the game and turn on post notifications so you will be the first to go into our next video.